As day yields to night, a hunter walks beside a lake. Still waters, reeds gently sway. As swans descend, slowly surrendering to smooth waters, folding her weary wings, and upon landing, scatters thousands of glittering peak flecks across ripples. As they drift closer to shore, they shed their feathers, wings collapsing to polished marble skin, warm sandy locks, rising from the shallows as women. They lay their plumy cloaks by the tide and step back in, pale silhouettes against the wild green, water cascading from her hair, clinging to flesh. He lurks behind the shrubs, stealing a shroud. When they are ready to take flight, they leap into the sky, all but one. She searches. Desperately, she needs her feathers. Without them, she's trapped. She cannot return home. So, she stays, sometimes becoming his wife, sometimes having children, and perhaps years pass peacefully, but eventually, she is called back to clouds. Stories like this are far older than most fairy tales. This is a Swan Maiden. I'm your host, Melissa Nunes, and welcome to Candid the Cryptic, your source for all things strange, spooky, and unexplained. Women who transform from swan to human using magical feather garments. The lore changes depending on where you are. Northern Europe, Celtic folklore, Slavic mythology, East Asian folktales, indigenous traditions throughout Eurasia and North America. But no matter how the story changes, the core remains the same. Transformation, longing, and captivity. The earliest recorded versions may date back nearly 1,600 years. One of the oldest written examples appears in the Sao Shenji, or In Search of the Supernatural, compiled in the 4th century. Later, Japanese, Korean, Scandinavian, and Celtic traditions preserve similar stories with astonishing consistency. Academic folklorists classify these legends under tale type ATU 400, the man on a quest for the lost wife. But scholars note that the Swan Maiden isn't simply a fairy tale heroine, but something far more archaic and stranger. Human in form, but caught between flesh and myth, neither of this world nor entirely beyond it. Even if people no longer recognize the folklore directly, it still lingers today, traces of the Swan Maiden.
The Swan Princess, an exciting, delighting, magical musical fantasy.
In The Swan Princess, Odette is cursed, by day a swan and only restored under lucid moonlight. A crisis of identity carried in secret. And while this story is romantic fantasy, it draws from something ancient, from centuries of European and Asian folklore. Legends that describe women suspended within two worlds, human and animal, earthly and divine, caged and longing for freedom. The curse is malefic and tragic, but echoes those long-held traditions. Here, Rothbard's obsession is not love, but ownership disguised as devotion.
All it takes is just one little word. Will you marry me?
Every night you ask the same question.
No.
And every night I give you the same answer.
Don't.
I'll die first.
You're really starting to bug me.
I should think you'd be used to it by now.
That's it! Just keep pushing it. But someday I'm gonna boil over.
Go ahead then.
Being is defined by metamorphosis, where feathers and enchanted cloaks are tied to their essence. In the Sao Shenji, a man steals the Swan Maiden's robe, trapping her. Similar stories later appear across Scandinavian and Slavic folklore, those existing between humanity and the skies. The Swan Princess tempers those darker elements into something more tender, yet hints of the myth still live within Odette herself. By day, poem in motion, drifting across the obsidian calm, watching her kingdom, her world from water. At night she regains her human form, once again belonging, but fleeting. By morn the spell claims her again, and Prince Derek becomes the hunter, tracking a swan through Lake Mist, never realizing his beloved stands at the center of the pursuit. And understanding Odette's curse, he reckons with his guilt and vows to love her beyond the enchantment. Instability becomes central to the film, shifting from skin to plumage, flesh, and something older beneath. More importantly, the story understands that transformation is never only physical. It is a fractured sense of self, the pain of displacement, a life divided between worlds. And Odette slowly withers from this unbearable tension. Each shift strips the certainty of who she is, where she belongs, and whether she will ever fully return to herself again. And that is the tragedy carried through centuries of Swan Maiden lore. It's never just about magic, it's about separation, the quiet longing to reclaim your autonomy, to return to the place that feels rightfully your own. In older legends, she reclaims her feathers, vanishing back into the endless silver beneath drifting fog where she was plucked from. And that may be why she endures across folklore and modern fantasy. The Swan Maiden embodies a deeply human fear. Losing your roots, unable to return unchanged. That's why Derek's vow matters, not love for beauty alone, but for the soul, for the self untouched by curse or feather.
Forgive me. I only wanted to break the spell. To prove my love. I love you. Your kindness and courage. I always have.
Derek?
Odette.
Oh, Derek.
Well, there you have it. Everlasting love.
And now for Odette's namesake in Swan Lake, embodying one of the clearest maiden archetypes, change, love, and independence. Scholars trace the ballet's origin and noted a strong influence from older German and Slavic folklore, where women shift between human and swan form through dark magic or feathered cloaks. The ballet elevates those ideas into something dreamlike and tragic. By day, Odette skims crystalline waters and ivory feathers, pale skin buried beneath. When night falls, she is a woman once more, but exists on borrowed time, only as long as the stars permit. Like many Swan Maiden figures before her, Odette is defined by separation. She exists close to the human world, yet remains unreachable within it. Prince Siegfried can see her, speak to her, even fall in love with her. But their relationship is constantly interrupted by the curse, and the ballet preserves the visual language of Swan Maiden almost perfectly. Feathers drifting, moonlit transformations, grace that conceals captivity, beauty tied to sorrow. Even the choreography reinforces the duality. Odette moves with unearthly elegance, elongated arms fold like pale wings, gliding weightlessly across the stage. Moments of near-perfect stillness dissolve into restless, airy motion, instinctive pillowing plumes veiled by silky flesh. That tension sets the tone. Odette is not simply trapped, she exists in a constant state of suspension between woman and creature, freedom and confinement, longing and grief. She remains untethered, woman and creature simultaneously, never fully separate, or one. In Black Swan, the lake darkens, feathers sharpen, and the transformation becomes something painful. There's no prince, no romance, no savior. Instead, the plot mutates into psychological horror, a shift no longer cast in curses or enchanted lakes, but through obsession, oppression, and the quiet collapse of identity. Scholars describe the Swan Maiden as liminal, a being suspended between human and animal, civilization and wilderness, open skies and closed cages. In older Germanic and Slavic traditions, the Swan Maiden represents a new state of existence, something instinctive and unreachable beneath humanity. Black Swan internalizes that mythology. Nina is not physically trapped by a sorcerer's curse like Odette in Swan Lake, but instead, she cracks psychologically, pursuing perfection by shrinking, dissolving. Feathers physically break skin, twisting her bones. Grace becomes predatory. And visually, the film returns to imagery deeply embedded in Swan Maiden stories. Cloud-like plumes, darkening, hardening, mirrored doubles challenging stability, fragile beauty collapsing into animal instinct. A woman, now feathered and unfamiliar. That connection becomes even more significant because Black Swan directly draws from Swan Lake itself, particularly the duality between Odette and Odile, the white swan and the black swan, opposing figures that have often been interpreted as divided femininity, innocence and desire, restraint and intuition, purity and corruption. The film turns duality inward, forcing Nina to embody both, no longer one or the other, but simultaneously until the boundary between the performance disappears entirely. In that way, Black Swan becomes strangely faithful to the emotional core of the older lore. It was never simply about beautiful women turning into birds. Rather, the terror of completely unraveling, women connected to lake and sky, forced between humanity and a wilder world they refuse to leave behind. Swan Maiden stories don't often behave like traditional fairy tales. They're quieter, more melancholic, and sometimes deeply unsettling beneath the surface. Because, in many versions, the relationship begins with possession. Her feathered cloak, stolen. Her essence, her freedom. She remains ashore because, physically, she cannot leave. Modern scholars examine these stories through themes of autonomy, gender, and power, often interpreting the feather cloak as symbolizing agency itself, stripping her freedom in exchange for marriage and an attempt at belonging. Yet the stories are rarely framed as purely cruel. That's what makes them emotionally complicated. Often, the husband genuinely loves her, and she loves her children. But therein lies the quiet truth. Love cannot erase her longing. In Scandinavia, the Swan Maiden may appear along emerald meadows, glooming lakes, or fern-lined clearings. The woman danced beneath celestial light, and the young man, secretly watching her descent into a field, takes the feathers of the youngest maiden. In Finnish lore, variants like Vaino and the Swan Princess, she is an enchanted royal, her humanity intertwined with animal nature, and among some Siberian and Mongolian traditions, Swan maidens go beyond their roles as magical wives. They're ancestral figures tied to shamanic belief systems and origin myths. Scholars studying Eurasian mythology note that bird-human transformations are deeply connected to ancient spiritual traditions, involving soul flight, transcendence, and communication between worlds. In these stories, the Swan Maiden goes beyond fantasy. She's sacred, a bridge between earth and sky. That symbolism matters because, for generations, Swan folklore has symbolized grace, purity, migration, transformation, drifting effortlessly between water, land, and open sky. Psychological and literary analysis suggest that birds, especially swans, become natural symbols for transcendence and emotional distance. Their seasonal return carried an almost mythic quality, as though they followed forces older than the human world itself. And unlike predators, swans rarely represent violence. They represent yearning, something divine and untamed. Perhaps that's why the archetype still feels so haunting in modern adaptations. The Swan Princess softens into romance and redemption, but the emotional DNA remains intact. A woman changed, love struggling against enchantment, and a longing to return home. Swan Lake takes those themes even further. Odette is not simply cursed, she's divided. The imagery of Swan Lake feels timeless, precisely because the haunting myths have remained timeless. Even if audiences are unfamiliar with the story, they instinctively understand the symbolism. More than magic, tales about a woman trapped and slowly losing herself. And almost all the stories end the same. The cloak is found, and when she touches those feathers again, she remembers. Sometimes she leaves silently, sometimes she weeps, sometimes she visits, briefly, for her children, before taking to the sky, forever. But she leaves, always. Because humans were never meant to tame her. They may try, but ultimately, they fail. Folklorists say that these stories thrive in cultures closely tied to water, migration, and seasonal change. And maybe that's why we still resonate, even now. Because underneath the feathers and folklore, the story is deeply human. Who hasn't felt divided? Who hasn't loved while longing for another life? Who hasn't become trapped by the very thing they once wanted? Is that why these stories survived? Because these myths gave shape to feelings that rarely fit cleanly into words? The ache of transformation, the grief of losing yourself, the longing to return to something wild. Thanks for tuning in another episode of Candidly Cryptic. If you enjoy all things strange, spooky, and unexplained, please follow for more.